Man, we're gonna use bond money on the shades now.
I think you're violent. They'll last another 20 years. Yeah. They've been here for 20.
You'll be carbon dating us. Alright, are we good? Alright. Call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I'm going to ask the veterans in our audience, including our board members, to lead the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, you guys and ladies, and thank you for your service. I know it's a couple days late, but don't want to miss that opportunity. Okay, we have awards, recognitions, and celebrations. Mr. Minka.
Thank you. Well, big news over the past week. Obviously, the bond passing was a big thing to celebrate for our community and our school district, and so we'll have more to talk about on that. Also wanted to congratulate Chuck Melke and Alicia Gardner on your successful run for school board. And Mr. Sapanik, congratulations on your re-election. So congratulations on that. You know, Mrs. Germain mentioned this, but Veterans Day is a big day. We had a lot of our students that went to the memorial to celebrate that. And we certainly do appreciate the men and women who have served and make it possible for us to come to school and learn in a free society. So we're very much appreciative. Special little presentation on recognition tonight. We have had the luxury, I would say, of having two people at both the middle school and the high school who are working on addressing the issue of student attendance. And we have had student attendance issues for, you know, about the past, you know, well, we've had them probably since the dawn of time, but the last 5 to 6 years, attendance has really become a problem. And so we decided to try and do something about that, and people who are more creative than I am have really been doing a great job. And so we have Lorraine Ahern with us tonight, and she's going to talk a little bit about the attendance incentives that she's been doing at the middle school. Maybe just share a little bit about the program, and then you have some specific kids you'd like to, I believe, call out and recognize. Is that right? Okay.
Yep. Thank you. We do have an attendance problem, and it's not just us, it's the whole state. Genesee County is 4th for poor attendance in our state, and that puts us a part of that. So we've started an incentive individually. Students that have perfect attendance or miss one day, a tardy counts as a absence. They're put in a drawing, and then at the end of the month we have a drawing for individual winners, 2 for each grade. And then we have a classroom incentive where classrooms that reach a 95% attendance rate get into a drawing, and they have a catered lunch. So for the month of September, we didn't have any classrooms that made 95%. We had 5 that made 92%. However, we had winners for the individuals. So we had 6th graders, Brianna Taylor, Gage Wheeler, Connor Lopez, Madison Massey, Caden Howell, and Anthony Everett. And those individuals won bungee chairs donated by ABC Warehouse. For the month of October, we had 11 classes that hit 95% or better, and we had 5 that hit 94%. So we had quite a increase there. The winner of the lunch draw was Nate Gatlin's class, and he's going to have a catered lunch from Famous Dave's, and it's paid for by County Commissioner Ted Henry. And with the classroom that wins the drawing, they also have a bragging banner that they get to hang outside of their door. So we have a dragon banner, and it's everyone in our boat is rowing, and it has first hour attendance warriors on it. And I'll tell you how to you can look at it in a minute. The winners for October were Gracelyn Walton, Katie Rupright, Kayline Majestic, Andrew Rogers, Olivia Gould, and Lillian Buchanan. And this month's, our October winners received 2 tickets each to the Spy Maker Escape Rooms, which is there by Outback. This month they're working on tickets to Planet 3, Extreme Air Flight Park, which is also on Miller Road. So that's what the kids are working for individually. I just wanted to recognize some of our donors. We have ABC Warehouse, Bymaker Escape Rooms, Planet 3 Extreme Air Park, and we've had anonymous gift cards donated from the A1 Treat Barn. For our lunch donors, we have Mr. Chad Orvis from Farmers Insurance, Mr. Bobby Maximowski from Horace Mann, the Central Assembly Pentecostal Church of God, and our County Commissioner Ted Henry. I also wanted to note that in October we had 3 days that we had every staff member present in October. And so I just wanted to give a special thanks to our superintendent for supporting us and for passing along Randy Sprink's attendance strategies. So we're gonna be coming up with some new ideas through that. Good. Mr. Claren and Mrs. T are for their support and assistance and their ideas to get us through this. And Mrs. Majel Parker, she works in the attendance office, so she's the one that kinda helps me get the data and the information that I need to get into the drawings. And I'd also like to thank Lanier, our reporter for the View, for her support in getting it in the paper. So if you want to take a look at what we have going on in the attendance incentives, if you go to our webpage and you go to the middle school, and under the middle school you'll see attendance improvement program. And if you scroll down and hit that, you can see what we have going on. You'll list our winners, what we're working on, and you'll also see our bragging banner there in the corner. So, it's been a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Thank you.
for all that you've done with that, and also for going out and finding community partnerships that will support that, and that's a great school community tie-in, and it wouldn't be possible without you doing that, so thank you for your work on that.
Well, I like doing it, and I've had some good stories with the kids, and I just don't wanna share them to
Sure.
embarrass any of them, but we've had some good things going on. Does anybody have any questions?
It's not a question. I appreciate what you're doing also. I love that you're partnering with the community members and businesses, because I think that's extremely important.
I haven't, I've just had one turn us down, but everyone else has been really excited about it and really wanna be a part of it.
That's great.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have a question. If anybody wanted to drop off gift cards, who would they give them to?
You can drop them off in the middle school office and just put my name on them.
Okay. So the community knows where they can take
Right.
their extra
Is
gifts
there
there.
a dollar amount then that you are suggesting?
We'll just take whatever we can get.
Thank you
Thanks.
very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. That's it for us.
Okay, good. All right, we have before us a consent agenda that includes the minutes from our last meeting, the agenda for tonight, and any resignations and retirements. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, so Mike, Jessica, any comments or questions? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, back to you, boss.
All right, so superintendent's report. I want to talk about a few items. First, Gaines Elementary School went to the Gaines Village Veterans Park to observe the Veterans Memorial Service, but we also had a number of our elementary students come over from Elms and other of our elementary schools to observe the Veterans Memorial Service here at our Veterans Park in downtown Swartz Creek. On Friday, Elms Road Elementary will be hosting another family night dinner. This one's sponsored by Italia Gardens. So Elms does a lot of really neat after-school evening family nights, and that's coming up. And I will be releasing to you my next family newsletter, which will hopefully start coming out every other week. You'll get that one on Friday this week, so you'll see that as well. I want to talk just briefly about Mary Crapo. This wasn't on the agenda because it kind of came a little bit late. We've been working with Communities First. If you recall, a few board meetings ago, you at that time had approved an option to purchase. We had talked extensively about that. The offer to purchase at that time, we decided to make an addendum to that offer, which was that it needed to stay as community use, senior use for 50 years. I asked them, to approve that, and they said that they could, but that they likely would have a very difficult time getting the necessary funding for that. They said there are several grants that would allow for a 30-year exception. So I have a option here that is the exact same one that you've already approved with a little bit of an update. So, this out there. So basically on page 7, if you just go, I've kind of highlighted it for you. We added a little addendum at our last time that we approved this. And this is really just for me to kind of get some guidance. This one is basically said it's mutually agreed that limited use. It's mutually agreed that the property will be limited to senior housing and other ancillary uses for 30 years, and any change in use must be approved by the Swartz Creek Community School Board, with which approval shall not be unreasonably withheld. So that was the their ask from us in order to secure the grant funding to move forward with the project. They would like to start having their architects and people that are looking at that building soon, and so I'd like to try and get some guidance on where to go from that. We did approve officially the 50 years. This would basically make that 30 years, and would that be acceptable to you or not? So I know it's not a board discussion item, but I'm asking for a little input at this time. So
Did they try?
they told me that they looked at the grants that they had available, and that there are grants available for 30 years, up to 30 years limited use. So again, as they've done in Corunna, Durand, Owasso, they did the project there on Oak Street. Those projects are funded by grant dollars, right? So they're looking at getting those grants so that they can renovate those properties. So in order for them to do that, obviously they need grant funds.
I personally think 30 years is reasonable and acceptable in the community.
I do too, and I like the language in here, the follow-up, that any change must be approved by the Swartz Creek Community School Board at that time.
Well, and also keep reading.
Which approval should not be unreasonably withheld.
Right.
Unreasonably withheld.
So what does that mean?
Unreasonably
You know,
withheld.
just like you guys took a tour and you saw what wonderful things they did, Mike and I talked about this the other day. I'll be gone shortly, you won't have to listen to me say this anymore. But if you'd like, I'll take you to a tour to some nice spots in the city of Flint that were once senior housing, and you can see what they are today. And you come back and tell me if you want that in your neighborhood. So let me know when you want me to take you on a tour, and I'll gladly, you can jump in my truck and we'll run into the city of Flint, and I'll take you to a couple that were senior housing. One Centerview Apartments at the corner of Center and Davison, another one's at Court in Avon.
River Village.
Fine establishments, wouldn't you say?
So anyway, we don't have to approve anything tonight. I just, if you wanna think about that, probably for the December 5th board meeting, I'd need to give them an answer. So this is more informational for you, and that kinda helps me know that we don't have an answer yet, so you guys can think about it, and then we can talk on December 5th officially.
So how much of a delay does this cause for them?
Uh,
This would put us into, second quarter of next year, or?
No, I mean, they obviously wanna try and get
Start
the
sooner
application
rather than
going, but, if we wait till December 5th to make a decision on it, that's fine.
Okay.
So, yep. So you have that for your information. I wanted to also, at the last board meeting, I was asked to provide you, I believe, Ken had asked for this, so I was asked to provide an update on our head counts and school of choice numbers, so I have done that. You wanna pass 4 copies that way, as well as 2 copies this way. Yep. So our Overall student count, you can look at all the data there, and if you have questions, get back with me. Our overall student numbers, our count for this year, after you consider all students, I'm sorry, getting to the last page. 3,627 students. That's our K-12 adjusted membership count, with special education included. So, you know, we're down a little bit of students. Obviously, we knew that we projected that, and obviously we hope to see that trend turning around pretty quickly here. So if you have questions on those, you can give me a call. This is a legislative update. I want to give you a couple different items here. So the first page goes over some of the people who won key seats in the election. Obviously, from a state perspective, Republicans retained the majority in the Senate as well as the House. We did have a record 51 women who were elected to the Michigan legislature this year. The prior record was 37. A large number of the school proposals passed in Michigan. I think it was 65% of them did, amounting to $1.2 billion, mostly for school security. And we did have, there is one bill, and you can read the update. You're used to seeing these. It has, you know, just a little synopsis on all the bills. There is one bill that I actually gave you the legislative analysis. It's the House Bill 6314. This is the legislative analysis right here. Obviously, this bill was introduced. It is not law, but it's something that they're considering. So I wanted to give you a little bit more information, because I do think sometimes there are bills that are pretty big bills that impact schools. This one would be one of them. This bill actually creates what they are calling a PID, which is an innovative school district. And so an innovative school district, a public innovative district, would allow schools to be exempt from a number of assessment, accountability, and clock hour requirements. And so as you go through this bill, you'll see kind of what they were looking at. They're looking at things that schools can do that are a little bit outside the box. One of the biggest things that the state is trying to move forward with the Marshall Plan is competency-based learning. So you'll see that that is something that's in the bill. I think there's some things that are going to need to be cleaned up in here, but it may be in the not too distant future that school districts such as ours are having to think about whether or not we would apply for something like this. What would be the advantages and disadvantages? I'm not prepared to make a recommendation on it. It just got introduced, but it's kind of interesting to see the direction that some of the lawmakers are going with that. So I wanted you to have the actual bill, and then of course the synopsis of the others are in there. I'm going to talk about the bond a little bit in detail when we get to the board discussion topic, but I'll just let you know that I got a few phone calls on Thursday this past week from just some community members who wondered why they didn't see cranes and things working on buildings. And I had to explain that just because it passed on Tuesday doesn't mean that we can start building the project. So it's a long project process. I will go into the details of that in my report in just a little bit, but it's still very involved. There's a lot of work that goes along with it, and I'll try and lay that out in a way that makes sense for everybody in just a second. I also want to let you know that I will be doing my self-assessment for you for my evaluation. My evaluation is scheduled for the second board meeting in December. I will do my self-assessment as I did last year, and I'll put that. I'll make sure you have that for the December 5th board meeting so that you can see that. And also included in your board packets, you have a GISD dinner invitation. There's a holiday gathering there for the Genesee County School Board members. There's also December 13th is when the gathering is at 5:30. And it's $35 each if you'd like to go to that. And one of the things I've had the pleasure of having conversations with both Alicia Gardner and Chuck Melke. I'm going to be meeting with them and getting them information on some of the classes that can be taken, school board certification classes. There are actually a couple December 6th through the 8th at Oakland Schools in Waterford. So I'll be talking with each of them about that and whether or not they'd like to get a head start before January. So that is all I have for my report at this time. Oh, yep, that's all I have. Thanks.
Until we meet again.
Until we meet again.
Right.
You really did get a call about Craig?
Oh yeah, 3 or 4. Wondered why there's not construction started.
Wow.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. All right, so we have board subcommittee reports. Let's see, I know you have finance. You wanna go, Mike?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Finance Committee met on Monday, November 5th. The auditors will be presenting their 17-18 report at the December meeting. The good news at this time is that the fund balance looks like it's gonna be coming in at under just 8%. Chris is still working on the budget amendment, and will be presenting it at the January meeting. Regarding the spending freeze, the building administrators have approximately 60% of the budgets, and 40% is being held back until the budget amendment is completed. The check register from October was reviewed. The general fund, there were 194 checks for a total of $537,078.99. In the internal account fund, there were 49 checks in the amount of $226,751. In the CDC account, there were 2 checks in an amount of $294. There are no pending quotes or bids out at this time. There will be several of them in the near future, thanks to the bond. Chris has eliminated a number of credit cards that administrators had and gone to a single Chase Morgan card, thus eliminating a large amount of paperwork. There were no public comments, and Brian asked for the total amount of the Dragons renovations, and that figure is not complete at this time, but we will receive it in the near future. Next meeting is set for December 3rd, and we adjourned at 3:57. Any questions?
The credit card, is it like one for a building, or how's that work?
I think each administrator has, or each,
Yep. So we have a Chase Morgan card, right, which we get a rebate as a district from the MSBA program. So if you're going to buy books or something like that, I mean, we usually use a purchase order, but if it's something that you need quickly, and also if you use that card, you get a rebate back. Well, what happened was, as she's kind of pulling all these pieces together, there are a number of additional cards that are out there, right? So there's a Sam's card, and then we've realized, you know, you have 5 or 6 of those, and then you have a Home Depot charge, and so you have these other pieces that are in place. So what we're basically doing is we're really cutting back the number of those that we have, so that we go back to just that Chase Morgan card, because the district gets a refund based on when you use that card, basically is what it is. And so then the other piece to it is, you might have, for example, at Moorish Elementary School, the principal has something for putting together an event at night, and so she has a small limit on that. There's also an additional card that's got an even smaller limit for, say, the building. So the principal's still responsible to approve all of that within their budget, but it allows, say, the STEM coordinator who's at Moorish to go and buy some consumables without having to incorrectly use the principal's card. There's a building card that's there as well. So trying to really rein that in and just make it tighter is what she's trying to do. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're eliminating cards.
We're eliminating cards. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Tony?
Building site meant at 4 o'clock, November
5th.
5th, yeah. They're still shaking down a little Dragon Learning Center, fixing the fine tuning the stuff, installing gates. Got a sewerage backup resolved from a old building cap that was blocking this drain. The PAC, new sidewalk was put in at the band entrance where the band classroom leaves. It was backfilled and the sidewalk was put in there to stop erosion. New salt spreader was purchased. The old one was a gas-powered one. They couldn't find parts for it anymore. They were spending about $500 a year to keep it going. So they took the old one, and they're gonna use that for parts for the other one, but they bought one brand new one. That was $5,800, so that was a good buy. They put a new roof on the salt bin. I think that was been outstanding for a couple of years. Speed bumps will be removed soon for the winter, so I went to removable ones. And the football field and soccer fields are gonna be top dressed for the next couple of years to maintain them. We adjourned at 5 o'clock and we meet December 3rd at 4.
Okay.
Any questions?
Just as far as the football field goes, when are you contemplating remodeling?
It's definitely not gonna be for at least a
A year
year.
or two? Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be, we would like to see it be done in a couple years, you know, but
Okay.
our first priority, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here, is the safety stuff, so,
Okay.
yep.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. All right, so academic achievement met this last Monday morning. And Katie Preer from Gaines, who's also our district MTSS coordinator, presented to the committee. She provided us with an overview of some PD that they had, the discipline with dignity approach. And she talked about the data, the STAR in math, STAR reading and math data by grade and by building. And we talked about that at length. And then we also talked about the impact of measuring the STEAM or STEM program and challenges for trauma-informed care, and we talked a little bit about adverse childhood experiences. Did I miss anything?
You did not. I'd just like to add that Katie's done an exceptional job. She's taken on a building and maintained pretty much the same work ethic that we've had for a coordinator. In fact, we had probably the most positive response to our fall data meeting, which is with our district team of about 30 people represented, 3 or 4 or 5 people per building. So hitting all those same topics. So.
And I would echo that. She's done an amazing job, and the data was really interesting. Any questions on that? Okay. Did I miss anything, Jessica?
No, you did
Mike?
great.
All right. We also had a short policy meeting. That was to talk about the process that we're going to follow for Neola. Neola, who creates our policies and sends them to us, is going to an electronic version of the policies. So everybody who doesn't have a laptop will be getting one or needs to get one, so that we'll have access for those. And we also talked briefly about the policy that's on our agenda tonight related to fixed assets and moving the dollar amount from $1,000 to $5,000 per the auditor's recommendation. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Anything else? Any questions? There's a packet of policies coming your way.
It's a big one.
That's a preview. All right, next we have board discussion items. I think we are up to Mrs. Murdoch, or did we
Did
have
you do
anything?
informational?
Oh, no, I did not, sorry. Do we have any questions? We did not.
We did not.
Employment of staff, Schedule
Back
B.
up just a second. We did, but it was a request for the numbers.
Okay,
and
that was it?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And I gave that.
No other staff or employment?
No.
Okay, so now we can go into board discussion.
So we have had a pretty successful fall with our music program and our band program, and so we're very fortunate to have Mrs. Murdoch with us tonight to share a update on the band.
Okay, thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of the sixth grade yet. It'd be cramming a lot of kids into a small space in the room because their first concert isn't until December. But they played every song. We just have to polish for the next month. Here's Dragon Marching Band. That's the last set of our show on our Jesus Christ Superstar show this fall. With a lot of parents' help, and the kids worked really hard. They did a great job. Carson is right there on the podium. But it was an incredible season for the kids. It really was. Our goal for them, and their goal, was to get a 1 at Marching Band Festival, and they received straight 1s and straight A's from all the adjudicators. So they had 1 A minus, but the rest were all A pluses and A's. And I got a call from one of our judges, and he was just raving. I happened to student teach with him, and he said, "Man, you guys really outdid yourselves this year." So they were really impressed. We went to 1 invitational, and we do that 1 every year or every other year. And all the other groups in our category classification are groups that we would call competitive marching bands. They go to competitions weekly. And our goal for our kids was to hit an 80, and they got a 90.8. So you'll see that too. But we start with camp in July, and here's some fun shots. The color guard always really does a nice job with their section togetherness day. Seniors get a steak dinner for their 4 years of dedication, steak or chicken, their choice. And Mr. Mike Vanderker came out with the fire hose again this year on one of the hottest days, and hosed kids down that wanted to stay after. We end Friday night with a dance, and most of the kids came to that after working for 12 hours a day. Our show was, it was a beautiful day for the show. They did a great job. Had 3 of the 4 songs finished by the end of camp, which usually we have 2 done. So it tells you the work ethic of this crew. We did the Special Olympians race just a short time after, downtown Flint. And then the kids had, we hung out down there for a couple hours. They had dinner and dance. They always have a live band. We almost played at the Crim. Lightning, we were ready to play. The race was getting ready to start, and they postponed, and we put the kids back on the buses and came back because it just wasn't safe for them to be down there. They love doing the football games. And being rowdy at our end there, we have one student in particularly that if we're not allowed to play, they'll still yell, get the band to yell, because they want to distract the other team for their older brother who's on the team. Not to mention any names, Mr. Heatherton.
No, who's that is.
Here's a shot of pregame from one of the earlier nights this fall. This is going on the field for District 3 Band and Orchestra, or band Marching Band Festival, not Band and Orchestra. And this is at Brandon, where they scored the 90.8, one of their shots from the field there. And I think Mrs. Gardner took that picture, because I stole it from your Facebook. Some members of our drum line came in and performed before the Capital City Brass Band concert in October. They had a Halloween concert in our VAC. The 7th and 8th grade had their spooktacular Halloween concert. That was great. The kids were really fun. We did Thriller at the end. That's the combined group. And you see we have a giant T-Rex in the back. Dragon Spectacular was November 5th with all the high school bands. We had all the concert bands and the jazz band also, but everybody's parents put pictures on for that so that I could swipe from their Facebook pages and on the band site. So we did have these, but we had great videos, but I didn't think you wanted to sit through. We just had our marching band banquet this last Friday night, and Jacob is in the middle. He earned our most spirited award. That's a very coveted award in honor of a young man named Jason Johnson, who passed away tragically in a car accident at the end of his freshman year. And Jason was a percussionist in the band my first year here. And we give the kids vote on that, and Jacob earned that this year. Some of our Swartz Creek drumline was down at the Veterans Memorial this last weekend also, taking part in the Veterans Day ceremony. And a lot of those kids were the same kids that came to the Capital City Brass Band concert and donated their time. Thank you, thank you, thank you for the sidewalk. That's going to make it a lot safer. And also a lot less, the grass will stay nicer because the kids, we're gonna keep them off the grass, do our best. That's one of our ending forms from the show this year. And I had to do 2 pages of alumni. We have, I think it's 12 currently in college bands that are from our group. Our newest is on the left, John Hill. He's at Michigan, marching in melophones. Daniel Cole in the upper right is actually what you call center snare at Western Michigan. That is the section leader of the drum line, and he is not a music major. He's just a real talented guy. He worked with our drum line. And it's nice when our kids play against each other. We have Northern Michigan and Grand Valley kids performing, you know, together. And I've also got these kids, and of course the kids without the coats, their mom put something on after I finished my presentation, you know, with their full uniforms on. I wish I could have got today, but our upcoming concerts, the 6th grade and middle school jazz band is on the 11th of December. 7th and 8th grade is 2 days later, and the high school band is the following Tuesday. We'll also be performing at the Swartz Creek Firemen's Santa Parade on December 1st. We have solo and ensemble with the middle school at North Branch High School on December 1st also. Do you have any questions?
Last month, I brought up the condition of some of the instruments, and is it okay if she talks about a little bit and
Sure.
reinforces that?
I have started a list. I was told I was supposed to start a list, and I have started that list, but I think, you know, that'll take time.
What's the oldest piece of instrument you have?
Well, probably one of the bass drums that's sitting on top shelf at the middle school, but that's not being used currently. The bassoons are both from the 1940s. We found out today that at least one, but probably multiple, because a lot of the high school bass clarinets are about the same age as each other, and we found out that they're between 30 and 40 years old. We have 2 baritones at the middle school that are 1968 models. I looked those up myself, because if I need a baritone to play myself, that's the ones I seek out, is the old Yamahas. That's when Yamaha's instrument factories were starting, was in the late 60s. And their first run, what we have, I'd rather play those than anything that's newer, because they just play better. We've got some tubas that need to be replaced over time, but some of those have been replaced. And it'd be nice to get to the point where kids that use school instruments do not have to share those with another kid. You can track better. And if a child damages something, you don't have 2 kids and one that really had nothing to do with, you know, responsibility with damaging an instrument or being careless with it. You know who was careless with it if one child has that instrument assigned to them. It's usually the bigger instruments that are school owned. Piccolos are one too, but I know they're small, but that's a more rare instrument. Not everybody plays that. Flutes, clarinets, trumpets, saxophones, alto saxophones are usually student-owned, trombones. We do have 3 kids at the high school that do own their own baritones. They just decided they wanted to get those. So.
What's the cost on a baritone? Just an
A
approximate.
good one?
Well, Yamaha, does Yamaha make them?
The Yamaha,
Or sell them?
someone, we get a discount when we order things like that. And, you know, certainly with your approval, if, you know, when we decide to purchase instruments, it's nice to not always get brand new. Maybe you can find a good deal.
Slightly
I have a lot of
used.
good friends that, you know, if they're getting rid of something they've played that's phenomenal. I mean, my favorite instrument that I own is a 1953, so, and it plays like new. Don't have, as long as they've been taken care of and well maintained. But, you know, the bassoons have been in how many hundred kids' hands? Probably over 70 years.
So there's a lot of students that are actually sharing with another student?
Well, there are students like the tubas at the middle school, you know, there are only 2 tubas currently at the middle school, tuba players. We have had as many as 6 over there at one time, and then you've got to share, you know. And it's nice for those kids. We send a sousaphone home, one of the marching fiberglass, the old fiberglass ones. We send those home for the kids to practice. Because a sixth grader carrying a tuba case on a bus, that's not happening. Mom and dad have to come get them, and if that doesn't work, because mom or dad are working, you know, and the young man that I have, currently mom's working when he gets out of school, and he goes to his aunt and uncle's house, so,
Well, just the idea of sharing
yeah.
an instrument with somebody else,
They don't share mouthpieces, obviously.
Right.
but sharing, yeah. I've never really cared for that, because one person might be really careful with the instrument, and one person might not be real careful. You've seen that. Carson has played tenor sax quite a bit, and he's seen how some people treat the instruments really well, that he inherits as he grows through the program, and some people haven't. The tenors are pretty old too.
Yeah.
There are times they've had paper clips held in parts on, you know, say, oh, can make this work just a little bit longer.
Thank you for all you do.
Well, thank
you.
you.
Any other questions for Jean?
Well, I first have a comment, if I may. Yeah, I said it earlier, and I'll say it publicly. The Dragon Spectacular was phenomenal.
Thank you.
It really, that is something very exciting to be so nice. I know the place is pretty much filled, but they have that, and throughout the year, that is really a wonderful experience. And congratulations to the marching band, and since Carson is in the room, you know, again, you guys did a great job this year, and it's really nice to see that and to have that experience. Now, I know you're getting a list together, and now switch gears for a minute. Do you have an idea, like, are you putting a list together, or like a priority list, or
I'm
is
putting
it a wish
together
list?
a
Do you
list.
have an idea yet, a ballpark, like
No,
monthly
because
or
I'm going to
quarterly?
send
Okay.
that off to, Herder Music said they'd be glad to bid, give us a guess, you know, give us a bid. And I would also ask Marshalls. There's a company I personally deal with out of Okemos, Meridian Winds. They're fantastic. Anything they have new, they have used, but sometimes their used is a better deal.
And do we keep any kind of contact as well with alumni maybe that aren't playing, or that didn't, they packed their instrument away maybe somewhere?
Those are usually the smaller instruments, and they
Okay.
donate those, and we do give those as loaners to kids.
Okay.
Or we have parents that have donated and said, this needs to go to a child that can't afford an instrument.
Sure.
And I just found out this year Marshall Music actually has a program for kids who can't afford instruments. We let them know, and they'll provide an instrument. It may not be the best, but it'll work, and they have quite a few.
Do any of the universities who have music programs provide them, or are they just so used that it would be beyond what you would
Provide them
want?
to schools.
To schools?
We have a university that donated 2 sousaphones to us 3 years ago.
Okay.
I can't say which one,
Is it
because
is it one that we know?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's not that one.
No,
Well, you can tell them
But
thank you.
that one.
Yeah, oh, we did.
Yeah, I know.
But we
The
were
other
not,
one.
that was part of the deal. They said,
Yeah.
we can't make a, you know, their university said, give it to a school. Tell them not to say anything. And they did. And it's, you know, they gave them to our middle school. They're two of the nicest fiberglass sousaphones we own.
But that's a possibility, correct? If
Oh,
you
yeah,
have a
it
music
is,
program.
it is,
Okay.
but they don't usually,
No,
they
that's
don't
right.
usually get rid of their stuff, because they have music majors that are using them for instrumental classes too. So they have to have a big quantity. You might have 30 people in a clarinet class.
I know a few years ago at Michigan State, when they went to all silver
Yes.
instruments,
They did, they did
they
some.
asked for parents and other sponsors to sponsor the instrument, and in exchange they put a little plaque on the instrument that says this was sponsored by, and that will live for a very long time, because those instruments are
Right.
used just for marching, and they use theirs for
And
rehearsal.
they use the others, yeah,
Is that
they use
something
the old
that-
ones for
Is
rehearsal.
that something we could do eventually? Is that something we could do as a community, is try to raise funds and have people be incentivized by sponsoring?
Yeah, I think one of the things we could look at is some fundraisers, right? You know, alumni oftentimes like to give back, and we saw that with the the Dick Richards natatorium fundraiser that we did. So I think there's definitely, when there's a need, I think that there's an opportunity to try and do something like that, which would be pretty neat.
I did forget one thing, the band boosters, their letter fundraiser that they send out in the fall. The ball is rolling. The middle school, you've been in the band room at the middle school and see how awful those lockers are. Those are going to be replaced with new Winger lockers. I just met with our chief of maintenance, and he's going to call the Wenger company, and they're going to bring a representative out to give us a good estimate of what that would be with the boosters have $10,000 waiting to go into those lockers.
Pretty cool.
That's great.
Well, thanks,
Yeah,
Jean. Thanks
thank
for all
you.
you do.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very
Great
much.
program. Thank you, Carson. Great leadership.
He-
Thank you very
yes,
much.
He did a good job. Awesome job.
Okay. Mr. Meinke,
Yes.
our Swartz Creek bond information.
Okay.
Where are we going
Yes,
now?
I want to, as I said earlier, I had a few phone calls wondering why we weren't starting construction yet. So I want to go through that process a little bit. This is going to be important to be communicating with everyone in our community so that they understand, what we're dealing with, what the process is like. Because Swartz Creek hasn't had one of these in close to 50 years, it's all changed and the laws are all new. And so I want to try and break this down in a way that I can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this sheet, which are just a handful. These are the majority of the vendors or the people that you're going to see as partners of ours that we have to work with to bring this project to completion. The first one is the architect. Your architect is, the architects actually say, this is the design that we're intending to build, and then they have to design it. NJB Architecture did the facility study. They've worked in schools for a long time. Probably one of the largest school and also industrial architecture firm in the state is a group by the name of King Scott. You've probably heard of that company. What we have found is that working with some smaller companies that are more local, NJB is one of those, can give us some really good personalized service, and they still have excellent they have excellent credentials and background in what they do. However, to pull off a $48 million project in a 3-year time period, it was going to be something that was a little bit beyond the scope of just their office. So they have reached out and partnered with WT Architects, which they're headquartered out of the Bay City, Saginaw area. NJB and WTA will be basically, their job is to make sure that what is intended to be done is designed properly. So to the person, that would see a rendering, all of that is in concept. So the way I would give an analogy is what you see in the facility study is like someone took a napkin and they drew out, this is the idea. Now the architect has to design it from how many feet of electrical cabling do we need? How many outlets are there? All of those types of detail work, they have to design it. The next partners that we deal with, and you've heard us talk about these guys, E&L Construction and Woolgas Corporation. They're going to be the two that you probably as a board are going to see and deal with the most. They will probably come to board meetings to make presentations on bid packs. The construction manager's jobs are basically everything from getting the contractors to follow the correct bid process to going out and finding people to do this work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in a short period of time. So the construction manager's job is to go out and get those front end things going. And then also to manage the project physically on site. So once there's work being done, the construction manager's responsibility is to make sure that these guys are doing what they're supposed to do on a timeline that they're supposed to be doing it. And so one of the things that, just as a little bit of a clarification, Woolgast and E&L, while they're joint venturing on this, Woolgast having a ton of school experience is really going to be on the front end more, where they're really making sure that the bids are coming in appropriately, that they're following the correct processes, that they're splitting things out. They interview all of the contractors, so they have to go in and make sure that when we say this is what the specifications are, and there's a bid, they have to make sure and absolutely do the background work to make sure that contractor can deliver, so that when you're seeing a bid pack to vote on as a board, you know that they've gone through that process. E&L then will be doing a lot more of the on-site management, even though they'll both have a hand in both of those things. The next partner there is PFM, and PFM is our municipal advisor. So our municipal advisor is basically, in the state of Michigan, there's a lot of red tape in terms of, do you have the proper resolutions filed by the board? Do you have your bond series structured properly? So for example, they might see that the property values are increasing as a result of the bond at a higher rate than they initially projected. There's an opportunity then to lower the millage rate, for the taxpayer. And so PFM is always looking at how can they protect the district and the taxpayer from how the bonds are structured. They also handle a lot of the reporting requirements. So when you have a bond, recognize that you have hundreds, if not thousands, potentially of investors in the bonds. So it's not like the voters approve it and then we just miraculously have this money come from someplace. We actually have to go out and have investors give us the money for the bonds. So with that, there are a ton of requirements that have to be followed in terms of reporting. Our financial statements are going to increase. The amount of workload in our business office and in this office is going to increase quite a bit as a result of some of those burdens. So PFM will help get us through some of those things and advise us on, when we go to sell the bonds, how do we do that appropriately. The bond underwriter, Stiefel, and it's possible that there could be another one depending on how PFM advises us to go. Stiefel is a bond underwriter, which you have to have a bond underwriter to get you the money. So maybe a little bit of a misconception that, you automatically have this money coming from somewhere. This money is coming from investors. So there's going to be people like Merrill Lynch or State Farm Insurance, for example, who like to buy bonds. And they might buy $8, $9, $10 million of bonds. Well, they go through and they buy those bonds through your bond underwriter. So there's only a few companies in Michigan that do it. Stiefel does the majority of school bonds in Michigan. And so basically they're going out and they're trying to sell the bonds to investors so that the district can actually get the money. There's something called pricing, where they are negotiating with investors and they're literally on the phone for a 24-hour period trying to find out if they can line up buyers to purchase the full $48 million of bonds. Stiefel will also work on, and we can talk about this more in December, local community members, for example. The majority of the money for the $48 million is going to come from investors who have very deep pockets or big corporations and companies that invest in bonds. One of the things that is a little bit interesting, though, is that a local community member, say there's somebody who has, $5,000 that they wanted to put into a CD at a bank, they could go into an FDIC secured CD at a Huntington bank and purchase a bond or a CD note. They could actually do the same thing with this bond. They could be an actual investor in the school bond. So they could say, I want to buy $5,000 of that, and then they are going to get the same kind of concept of a return on any other bond they'd purchase. So Stiefel, as the bond underwriter, manages all that. And remember, not everybody can do these things. You have to be licensed and insured within these areas to be able to do that. So once the bond pricing is done, we actually get the money. The money comes in at one time. We then have a bond proceed investor, and that group is called UMBA. UMBA is licensed and insured, and they're guaranteed custodians on the money. You have to make sure you have all those things in place so that nothing goes wrong. But essentially, when you have $48 million, it's kind of like, if I were to do the analogy to break it down, if you all of a sudden got a $10,000 gift, somebody gave it to you, would you put it into a checking account? Or would you try and put it into at least a money market account or something to try and, knowing that you're not going to spend that $10,000 all right away, you may actually put it into an account to earn a little bit of interest versus a checking account. Well, when you get $48 million, you can't spend, and you won't be spending the $48 million all in the first few months or even all in the first year. You're spending it over the course of 3 to 5 years. The projects have to be completed within 3 years, so you're spending the bond proceeds in that time frame. So what happens is that you're getting this $48 million, of which you're maybe only spending, say, $13 million or $12 million in the first year. The other amount of money if it's invested properly, you may end up with more proceeds, right, to finish the projects or for unforeseen circumstances. Those are all things that happen, especially when you have a bond project of this size. So that gives you hopefully at least an idea of who our partners are that help pull this thing off. This is not a simple task, and so that's why there are people who have licenses and are insured to do this type of work. So that's everything from the construction managers, architects, to the financial people. Does anybody have any questions about who those people are? And then I'm going to go into the process a little bit.
Just one comment on E&L Construction on Wall Gas.
Sure.
When the PAC was built, right out of the gate, I can't tell you, I'll probably lie to you, but I know they repaired the roof 3 times within the first year. Then there was also some masonry work that was done shortly after it was built. There was something else, I don't remember what that was. Whoever put that together, I don't recall who the
Clark
company was.
Construction.
Okay.
Yeah.
These people need to get more of a guarantee from the people doing the work that they're gonna come and fix this. Cause obviously if something's already leaking in the year, it's something didn't get done right. Either that,
I agree.
so, you know, again, that's something I think that you guys should really do differently to protect yourselves. If they're not giving a guarantee, then, I don't know that I would use them. Because we did experience that, and some of that stuff come out of our pocket. Well, the masonry work that was just done, a year ago, well, it was only $25,000. Why are we doing masonry work on a building that's 3 years old? You know, so you know, these two groups here, I think, need to do something very different and hold more accountable than what Clark Construction was.
I agree. One of the reasons that we decided to go this direction as well is because of the experience we had with Clark Construction. So Clark Construction, you know, I have never worked with them before, so I don't have anything specific to say other than in this district, you know, they're not local. So they're one of these big construction companies. They do all this work all over the country. And so I think once they were kind of done, I mean, they're not here. These two groups are fairly local. One of them is very local, and they actually are required to insure the project. So they offer the warranty to say if something's going wrong, they're on the hook to kind of fix it. So they're a construction company, and then it's their issue to deal with. You know, hey, this thing's broken down. We just built it a year ago. It's still under warranty. You guys have to come ensure that this gets done.
Well, and I think that's what you got to look at differently, because I'm sure Clark Construction was insured. I mean, I can't believe they weren't. So I mean, that doesn't sell much to me here. It's who's insuring what, you know, and who's guaranteeing that work's going to be fixed.
Yeah.
Was there warranty included when they made their bid? The bid package?
I can't tell you.
There was a warranty with Clark, and Clark was there to fix that roof 3 to 5 times over the course of a period. I don't know if it was a year and a half, 2 years, but it just they never completed fixing it. And the masonry, that was always an issue, and there was complaints, and Clark had people come out and they fixed it, and it lasted a short period of time, and then the warranty was gone.
Oh, the third thing was the steps.
Yeah, that was I call masonry the steps.
Well, no, they did masonry like literally on the brick of the building as well. So I mean, I don't know what you have to draft differently, but something has to be drafted extremely differently, because as far as I'm concerned, the workmanship was poor, and the way it was insured and corrected was even worse. Because I know we had someone out here 3 times on that roof in the first year.
Yeah.
Gene's nodding yes.
Yep.
You probably got dripped on, right? So
During a concert.
right. So I mean, however these people write this up, if they're gonna do this, I'd like them to be held accountable for whatever. I don't know what the reasonable timeline or anything else is, but that didn't go well the last time.
Yep. We have to ensure that they're not only they are required to warranty it as a CMA. So the key there is, you know, whenever we put something in, all of the projects will have a warranty of some kind. So they're going to need to be responsible to, you know, be accountable to that.
If it even costs us a couple bucks, I think it would be worthwhile having our attorney look at them. I would rather spend money that way.
Could we have sued Clark for not upholding the warranty?
Sue anybody.
It's possible, yeah, I mean, it's possible. You know, I don't know the specifics of when you built the PAC, what the warranties were on the project, but.
Well, and Clark's pockets are bigger than ours. I mean, if you're doing a $10,000 repair, is it worth suing them? You know, unless you're gonna get attorney fees, and how long are they gonna drag it out, and you're paying for the repair anyway.
Then it's good that we're not going with a big company.
Yeah.
Well, that might be what scares me with going with a smaller one.
To your point, it's easier to hold a local company accountable
Well,
for their work and their reputation.
they're gonna have to drive through this community and, you know, eat at our establishments and, you know, so there's a little bit more buy-in, you'd hope.
I like the idea that you have two architects looking over, two, you know, competitive architects and two competitive, construction managers. And I just truly believe that's gonna create a lot of, more honesty and better workmanship.
I hope so, yeah, I mean, they both have good track records, I mean, we've vetted their work, Wolgas has done a lot of work in the state of Michigan. You know, they're I think they're might be doing the $176 million proposal that just got passed in, Lake Orion, so, yeah, they do a lot of schoolwork.
The other side of that coin, though, Brian, is that's also an easy way to finger point. It's your fault, Wolgas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, however this is written up, someone needs to be held accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise it's gonna be, well, we didn't do that part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just, you know, we got shortchanged the last time, and, you know, a couple of us had walked in here, and it wouldn't have mattered if I'd been on this board 5 days or 5 years. You know, that's why I say have an attorney look at it, because I don't wanna take any of the brain power away from anyone at this table, but I'm highly doubting any of us are bright enough to look at that and catch stuff, and that's why you hire an attorney to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that part of it is, if we do have these issues, who's gonna fix them? And how do we hold them accountable?
Right.
Jessica, you had a question?
Yeah, well, and you made the comment with the architects, I know E&L and Wolgast are working complementary to each other. NJB and WTA, they're joint too, are they doing two separate parts of it, or are they overlapping what they're looking at?
They're working together on it, so essentially, to do the amount of design that has to be done, NJB is working with them to help them with the horsepower, basically, to say we need like 3 or 4 more architects working on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So, instead of,
I'm just
They're
asking,
working
making sure
together.
they're not compartmentalizing different parts of the project, they're working jointly,
They're working together.
cohesively,
Mhm.
overall for each of the buildings, right?
correct, yep. Yep, for sure, but for example, one architect might specialize in electrical layouts,
Mhm.
while the other does foundation work, and the other does, you know, finishes. And so you got 3 or 4 architects working on just one of the spaces that are being worked on, right? So, yep. All right, I'm gonna talk about the process timeline. So this is a very high-level overview. We're gonna start communicating this out to the community as well. So I want to talk about 2 different groups. Number one, we are going to need to have a bond steering committee. And the bond steering committee is essentially going to be a group which we hope would include a couple board members, myself, probably you know, Chris Gray, and also the construction managers and the architects. That group is going to be on a fairly nimble and regular basis having to get together to say, okay, this is a project that we're looking to put a bid pack together for, something came up, are there any changes that need to be made? And then that committee is able to, within a certain degree of reliability, make some decisions on different parts of the project. So I'd like to try and solicit 2 board members. I do think it makes sense for Tony and for Brian and Mike potentially, just because you've been on the building and site. I really don't need any more than 3 though, so if one of you don't think you can make it regularly, the meetings would have to be during the day. We could try to schedule them on Mondays when you're home, but I know that sometimes your schedule changes. One of the things that is just challenging, is that you're gonna be pulling the construction people, the architect, they're gonna be meeting during business hours, so that can be a little bit of a challenge, I know, for some. But I would like to have a couple board members on that committee. The next group I'd like to talk about is something that I talked about during the campaign, and we wanna try and make sure that this happens. I'd like to start a Citizens Oversight Committee. The Citizens Oversight Committee is basically to look at when construction starts, here's a design, here's what the bid is for and what we're looking to accomplish in this portion of the project, and to have some people that could have eyes on it that are community members, might not be board members, they don't work for the school, that essentially can be kind of watchdogs for us, that are able to look at that and say, okay, they said they were going to spend the money on that, we're here as involved and concerned citizens, and we're seeing that they're spending the money appropriately. They will have an opportunity to report that out. We'll put that out in a newsletter of some sort. But I think there would be a great value in having that, just because as soon as construction starts, everybody and their brother is going to have an opinion on, well, I thought it was going to be blue paint over there, and it turned out that they did red, and I wasn't happy about it, and I thought the school district said they were going to do this or that. And so when you have a group of people that hopefully can have eyes on it, maybe even people who were not necessarily for this proposal, I think it can be very helpful to get that perspective. So I would like to start soliciting some community members from that perspective, and maybe just with an application that they could put in, and then maybe at our next board meeting we could start looking at some of those applications and seeing who might be interested in that. I've talked with a few people just who some were skeptical on the project and maybe even voted no on it. Some were supportive of it, but that might have a background in facilities, or they've done that in their past. So just wanting to throw that out there as two different things, because you're going to see that in here. So starting now is the design period. They are designing projects so that we can actually get bids. The construction crews cannot go and get bids unless they have something that's designed. They can't just say, well, it's kind of going to be this. They have to have all the specs done in order to put a bid package together so that contractors can put in bids on it. So what that looks like is, right now they're immediately working on designs for the front entrances of the buildings and some of the secure door features in the buildings. What can we reasonably get done before the start of the fall of 19 school year? That's a big goal, but we promised people that we were going to focus on safety and security first. We need to do those things first, and so that's what we've asked them to start designing right now. So the hope then would be that in the next board meeting we'll have what's called a bond authorization resolution, which is essentially just certifying, yep, we have the bond passed, and it's a formality, but it's something that it's a legal process that you actually have to authorize. We'll establish a bond steering committee and the Citizens Oversight Committee, and then the bond structure and sale work will commence. So that is working with Stiefel, working with PFM on trying to set up the bonds for sale, which means that over the course of the next couple months, they're going to be structuring some of those things. In January and March, we're doing bond pricing, which is actually where they're getting ready to go get those bonds to sell. So parallel to that, all that design work was being done, and the construction managers are working with them. And hopefully in January, it's kind of what we're pushing them towards. We would like to be able to start to see a few bid packs put together. We're focusing on those entrances at the buildings, and so we'd like to see them do that. And probably in February, late January, early February, we might actually have a board decision to make where you'd be able to start looking at the different types of bid packs that are there. So once the board accepts and approved bid packages, obviously then the construction starts and we have draws and all of those other types of things. Ongoing meetings with the bond steering committee and the Citizens Oversight Committee. The bond money, we will not actually have the delivery of the bond proceeds probably until about mid-February. So to the person that I talked to on the phone that was wondering why we haven't started construction, we're not going to get the money even until mid-February. the taxpayers in this community will not see this until, if they're a city resident, they'll see it on their summer of 19 tax bill, will be the first time that they see that on their taxes. And the township folks will not see it until the winter tax bill for 19. It's just the way that the levies are done. So we get the money in February. We'll prior to that already have started the bid process and hopefully get people on the hook. Obviously, the sooner we can get a bid out there, the better pricing we're going to get. You saw that with the Little Dragon Center. The later you get your bids out, contractors' schedules are full, the prices get higher. So we'll begin drawing bond proceeds as early as February, right around the time we start getting the money, because again, essentially the architect firms are working for free for the next few months, because they understand there's no money to pay them, because we don't get bond money until February. And they understand that that's part of this process. They understand that's kind of part of the deal. So that's when that's going to start happening. And then hopefully April of 19, or maybe even slightly before that, is when we hope to have a shovel in the ground. And we would make our mission to try and get those entrances completed and the door mechanisms completed before the start of the 19 school year. Everything that happens after that I can't predict, because they're going to look at when is it most reasonable to get contractors on certain jobs, when are the parking lots likely going to get done. All of those things will be advised through the construction managers, but we've made a pretty big push to them to say that those first things have to be those security features, the biggest parts of those security features. So and then it's going to be 3 years of constant boards communicating out. We envision the Citizens Oversight Committee as well as the district communicating out every time there's a money spent. Thank you to the community. The bond of 2018 is paying for this. This is how much we spent. This is what we did. We want that to be very transparent to the community, which is what we promised them. So that's kind of the process in a nutshell. That's kind of a high-level overview. I know I've skipped a lot of steps, but I've talked for a long time about it, so I want to make sure that you know a little bit about that, and if there's any questions that you guys have on the process.
I would offer up to be on the bond steering committee.
Okay.
I'd like
I'm
to.
in.
All right. That was fast. Thank you.
Now, will that committee be a committee of the whole as well then, or no?
No, mainly because they're gonna need to be able to meet like that, and if we have 4 people, it's gotta be a committee of a whole. It's gotta be so if you guys wanna draw straws and send a proxy, or you could have alternates, you can do whatever you want. It's also possible that Alicia and Chuck will wanna be involved with that in some capacity. So the challenge of it really though is that there's going to be more meetings than your monthly committee meetings. It's got to be somewhat flexible, because they have to meet quickly, and they might say, hey, we've got a contractor that's looking at, they can't move forward until they get a decision on something, and so that steering committee has to be pretty involved in that project. So
Is there a provision that could be done on the phone if something was that critical?
there is, and then there's also something that we're going to talk about in a later board meeting, would be there really does need to be an authorization, and we'll have this information for you probably as early as December. You're going to need to authorize what you're comfortable authorizing me to be able to make on a change order. So for example, you're not going to have the whole steering committee get together or the entire school board to make a $30,000 adjustment on a change order that is something, an example of this would be, we go to do a parking lot and we realize that underneath the parking lot, the base there's a sinkhole, right? It's gonna cost us $30,000 to fix that, right? So there's a change order that comes in, and they're waiting until they get that change order. So it would be completely unfeasible for us to move the project forward in 3 years if we have to call a board meeting to have that
Right.
conversation.
Right.
So there is going to need to be a conversation about, to a certain, it's not unlimited, but you would have to authorize me to be able to approve change orders to a certain number. And we're having some conversations about that soon. So
Probably
that's
can
a good
turn you
question.
loose till you screw up.
Yeah, there you go. Hopefully I don't screw up. That's right. Uh, Anybody else have questions on the bond process?
Maybe just a clarification with the Citizens Oversight Committee. They will give input and suggestions, but there's nothing that they can vote on to change. That all comes
Well,
from
what
the
we're
board.
yeah, what the board, school board is going to make the ultimate decision on what bid package you go with. So, for example, you know you're going to get multiple contractors bidding. And I think what our intent would be, and I believe this would be the will of most of the board, we've talked about this in different places. You know, if you have a bid for a parking lot for $1 million, and you've got 4 contractors that bid on it, and somebody came in at $1 million, and somebody came in at $1,040,000, and then everybody else was above that. Well, the $1 million bid was the low bid, but they're from the UP or whatever. The $1 million $40,000 is a local contractor. You as the board have to make have to make the decision on which bid pack you're going to go with. You might say, well, we want to go with the local one because, and so you really need to be going with the lowest qualified bid, because there could be a reason that the person that bid $1 million said, well, they're going to use cheaper material that doesn't meet the specifications. So the CMA is going to advise us, and I'll be bringing that with all of the bid packages. So you're going to see all of those. So you're the ones making the ultimate decisions on any of this is what we're doing for this project. So it's going to be a busy 3 years, because you're going to be looking at, in some cases, several $1 million worth of projects that you're approving in one fell swoop there, right? So there's a lot that goes into preparing it to get to the board, but the board will make the decision on that. The Citizens Oversight Committee is really supposed to be a communication group that is looking at, this is what is being sent to the board, this is what they're recommending, and this is what they're doing, and they're not doing, or they are doing, what we as community members believe is what they promised they were going to do. So it's not, hey, I don't like the color scheme there. It's, did you spend it on the 4 areas that you said you were going to spend it on? Where is the money being spent? How is it being handled? And then there's a communication out. So we would probably have something in the View newspaper. We'd probably have something on our website, you know, just constantly updating when the money's spent, where is it being spent, and how is it being spent. So that's the idea of that.
Anybody else?
We already talked about that next one there.
Very grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have the fixed asset policy, which has been updated.
Yeah, so we passed out one of those at the beginning of the meeting. Sorry. Okay, so our auditors came through, and they are just recommending a very small tweak to our policy. And there's actually one other place I need you to strike out. So if you look at the 1, 2, 3, third paragraph down, where it says $1,000, the auditor is saying that the Government Accounting Board standards require that be $5,000 and not $1,000. And so what that really means is when they go in to do the audit, because of our board policy, they had to audit 60 pages of fixed assets instead of 20 pages, if that makes sense. It's not those exact numbers, but our threshold was not appropriate for what the government accounting standards asked for. So this change is really just about making sure that the $5,000 and the $1,000, that's the only change. And then when we're talking about computers, because we have iPads and Chromebooks now, that's not what we're talking about. So Chromebooks and iPads are, you know, $200 a piece, $300 a piece. We have an inventory management system for that, but to put that on the state of Michigan fixed asset book, nobody would do that, because it's not, you don't put stuff on there that's below $5,000 essentially is what they're recommending. That's the only change. And so that came through that, and they may talk about that when they do their presentation at our next board meeting.
an age, you have a $5,000 computer?
We don't.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
No, but
Okay.
back when this was probably written, the computers were $5,000,
Yes.
you know, at different times, so.
Well,
when
they
this
only needed
official
to
was-
be 1,000.
Right, yeah, that's true, that's true.
We needed
that's
to be
true.
$1,000.
Yeah, you only needed 1,000, that's all. You're right,
Okay.
but, yep.
Any questions for Ben? Okay. Going?
Sold.
All right, so going on to number 9, our one board action item for this evening is the fixed asset policy revision. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second.
Brian, Tony, any comments or questions? Be it resolved, the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approved the fixed asset policy P7455 recommendation from auditors as presented. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now we are at the point of our meeting where we can take comments from our audience. If you'd like to speak to the board or present to the board, please stand, state your name, and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Anybody? Yeah? Okay. All right. Going on, comments and questions from the board.
You know, we finished up that, those CBA classes, MASB, that conference we had this past weekend. Would you like me to wait for another day and time to kind of report back? 'Cause, I mean, I probably had at least 5 to 10 minutes, and I don't really wanna take that time right now.
If you
but-
wouldn't mind.
You
And
wanna
I
do it
know,
right now?
I know, no, another
Okay.
different time, only because I know Jessica had some really good points from it too, and maybe you guys wanna chat, or anybody else that wants to.
We could put it on an agenda and we
That's
could
fine.
talk about it.
Yeah.
That would be really good.
Just shoot Carrie and I an email and we'll put it on the
Yeah.
agenda.
That'd be good, but thank
But
you.
it was a good conference.
Excellent.
It was very good,
Good.
definitely.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm gonna take his time.
We're gonna put you on the next agenda.
I know that Mr. Manka and Mrs. Murdoch talked about the veterans, attendance at the veterans service. I was there, I was so impressed with 8 of our students that I wanna put those students into the record. That service was held at 11 o'clock on Sunday, and it was cold out there. And there were 8 students. The drumline members were Jay Brown, Brendan Johnson, Felicia Weaver, Corbin McGrath, Eric Mellon, Ben McGee, Britt, Hespen Marshall. They did a great job in setting the tone for that ceremony. It was just great. And the post commander from the VFW was looking for someone to sing the national anthem. And he was put in touch with Mr. Luke. And Mr. Luke set him up with Christina Plum. And Christina is a senior, and she's a member of our varsity chorale and women's encanto. Correct?
Yes.
Christina just did an awesome moving performance. And I just found it very encouraging, and I want to give them all a big thank you for sharing their talents in this community event. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got like 3 more minutes.
Brian can have it back.
I'm gonna watch that.
Anybody else?
I do. Real quick, I stopped by Elms Elementary. I drive by it quite often, and I not went over and met with Dave. Yeah, since he's been moved over there as the principal. Went over there today, had an excellent conversation with him. He seems as happy could be. Had positive things to say about Ben, and he was very content, and that was what I stopped over to see, is how much he was enjoying himself, because when Ben made that move, I thought that was an excellent move. He's just a very nice man, and I've been gonna stop, and I never have until today. I did, so that was very positive. Second thing, I'd like to congratulate Ben. I called him.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I stayed neutral. neutral as I could. But I called and congratulated him on passing the bond. While I think it was something that was very needed for the district, I had some reservations with it. The one thing I will say, and I'd like all of you to think about it, and especially when you get the 2 new board members, I think in the length of time I've been on the board and previous boards, I don't wanna see the next board do this. I think you guys have to start thinking about 20 to 30 years down the road. When this bond expires, these buildings will be 80 plus, close to 100 years old. I don't know what the future's gonna look like, none of us do. But I think the sooner that the board starts thinking about how they're gonna start replacing these buildings, maybe you only replace one. You know, I mean, I don't know what the district will look like then, how many kids we'll have or nothing else. But something's gotta be thought of, cause you're not gonna go and do a bond for 5 buildings or 4 buildings, let alone 7. So that was one of my huge reservations in this. Not the bond, but the amount of the bond and the length of time. So I hope that the next board does something that I think the boards I have sat on has failed at, and I'll include myself in that, and the previous boards. That's something that has to be addressed. So I wish you guys the best in doing it, and I hope it's not ignored, because it's easy to ignore it, because everything's gonna be rainbows and unicorns for a few years. And, you know, we're gonna have pretty new faces on our buildings, and everything's gonna be fine. But in about 10 years from now, when you start having to replace that technology and you start fixing the parking lots because they're starting to get old, you're gonna be hitting another, you're gonna hit the millage that comes up in 2028. If it's renewed, which I'm sure, I would think it would be, most get renewed, but 30 years from now, or, you know, why did we close Mary Crapo? It was too expensive to bring up the code. You're gonna have buildings almost that old in 30 years. And it's a huge topic that it can no longer be ignored. And I'm not smart to say I have the answer, but it's something you guys have to address, and I wish you the best. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. I actually do have something to say. I will jump back to the MASB conference for a second, because I did do one of the sessions on, after a bond is passed, but part of their presentation was before you go for a bond, the best practices, the right things to do. And I really want to acknowledge Ben as far as what they said a superintendent should do in being open and talking about it and addressing people's concerns. And I mentioned, like, that you had talked about at one point how specific we were with our language for the bond proposal, so that we can be accountable to the community. And that's a really big thing. I didn't realize how many places don't do that, because they were saying the bond lawyers want you to keep it vague, you know, so to give you that flexibility. And it was just so nice as a new board member coming on and seeing that the practices as far as this board is concerned, and as far as everything that the bond committee did and Ben's done in communicating was right on. So I just wanted to say nice job.
Thank you very much. Just happy we got it passed and ready to get to work.
So I want to thank Jean for being here tonight. Thank you again. Carson, thank you for being here. I'm sure you have other things to do when you get home, right?
He had to be here for
He had
class.
to be here for class.
Oh,
Don't let him
okay,
fool you.
well, thank you for being here.
It was a
He did
bonus
his-
that his picture was.
Doing your civic duty
Yeah.
without your mother forcing you to do that. I also want to congratulate Alicia and Mr. Melky and Brian for being reelected. We're really looking forward to working with you. Hopefully we'll see faces here on a regular basis. I also want to congratulate the bond committee. How many people were on that group?
There were 17 of them.
17 people who regularly were out in the community working on this. And if anybody followed them on Facebook, all the pictures they took of putting out the signs, and you know, they went door to door and they did all kinds of things. But I also want to thank Ben, because without you, it wouldn't have happened.
it's just amazing how much time it was, and now it's like I get to go do my normal job again. So.
How many hours did you spend away from your family?
There were a lot of nights.
You owe them a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I gotta put some more deposits in the family account.
Yeah, you do.
But it's a pleasure. It's really it was all about putting information out and letting the community decide what they're gonna do, and win or lose. It was nice to see them support that. And now I think the mission has to be accountability to what we said we were gonna do. And I believe that there's an opportunity here, obviously the opportunity for doing some things facility-wise, but I think there's also an opportunity to build some trust if we do it well. And so we have to deliver that. So I think we had to continue to talk about it and make sure that we keep that a priority.
That vote already showed there was a building of trust. And I think, it'd be nice to sit here and for us to take credit for it, but I'll take none. You did that. You're the one that communicated that. You're the one that got those people going. I mean, I don't want to toot your home too much, but you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Put that on your resume.
It's already there.
Can I have you sign that?
No, but I mean, you did. You did those things, and it was fun to watch. Because I mean, I sat back and I was watching, and I did. I couldn't wait to call you after you left, because I said to my wife, I said, that dude, he did it.
Mhm.
I said, he did a great job. So
Thank you.
And we need to
Appreciate
thank the community at large
Sure.
because they
Yeah.
believed in the
Mhm.
kids in the district and the community,
Yep.
so. thank
And they
you.
did their civic responsibility.
Yes, they
voted.
voted in record numbers.
Yay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Most
Are you
most
18 yet, Carson? You will be
But
registered
he,
though,
but
won't
he
you?
actually did ask Dad to go to the polls so he could watch. So he
Good,
was ready for next year. So he
Good.
actually went out to the polls.
good. It's very important. People don't realize how important that is. It makes a huge difference. If you don't think your vote counts, look at places like Florida and. That's all I'm going to say.
Or here, Village Pass.
So I think that's all I had. Andrea left. I was gonna thank her because she provided some excellent leadership for the bond committee.
she did. She did a good job.
She did. She was out there rallying the troops and answering questions, and so we're grateful to that. I don't know, did we miss anything? Lorraine, thank you, Lorraine. She's gone.
was too.
But thank you for your attendance program. That's really amazing.
Yeah.
All right, anything else? Going, we are adjourned.
Yeah.
And go home and watch the last half hour of the Michigan State.
Did you want me?
Oh, football.
Rick's there.
Oh, is he? Good for him.
I'll do that.
Did you see that kid?
Because I had some questions.
No.
The man child?
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
Later.
Well, they're so amazing.
He's like a baby LeBron.
November
That dude, they played North Carolina in that when they had the 14. Oh my goodness.
No, I didn't.
That dude
Oh,
was
Brian needs to sign that.
he was a monster.
Yeah. I don't know how they do that.
I don't either.
They've only gone a year anyway.
That's true. That's how you do that. There's 3 of them. They're only gonna be there a year. Yep. Yeah. I was coming down to you. Yeah, I was. I swear to God. I wouldn't lie to you. And you want my full signature at the top, correct?
We were in for 12. We actually, everybody was up and waiting and hungry and like,
Initial.
go grab a burger. So we did.
Nice.
That's a good thing. I'm like, well, it was the first time we had 2 of the dads and 2 of the boys.
Oh, that's